difficult transition from New York to LA because of everything, historically, emotionally, professionally, and also at the time it was interesting because I had graduated from grad school, but I really didn't have on-site experience. I had another previous graduate degree before Yale. What he wanted to share. I grew up in Seoul, Korea, so I'm a true fop. I was fresh off the plane, and so I didn't have any LA, New York experience working as an actress. So I was, in a good way, very idealistic. In a bad way, I wasn't savvy about the business. I didn't know agents. I didn't know about commercials. I didn't know stereotypes. I didn't know how I would get boxed in. So I say that was helpful because it was the unknown, or I came from the majority, so I had a very different perspective. But clearly it was very, very clear after school and after my some extraordinary experiences that I had due to my mentors. I had worked with Anna Deavere Smith and Ping Chong right out of school, and they're just the great masters, and I was very fortunate to have them as my mentors. But I realized kind of the reality of New York City, and I had to make a choice at that time. Either I was going to be a generative artist like Ping Chong and do my own work and develop and do an international festival circuit, or I was going to have to be much more mainstream. I had thought when I was in school, I was like, I'm going to do classical work and Shakespeare and be touring, and I was like, wow, I can't even get auditions, and I know this is not because I'm not talented. I know it's not because I'm not trained. So I remember discussing with a lot of my friends at the time, and Yuna being one as well, and they were a lot of my friends at the time were independent filmmakers, and they were like, why not LA? And LA was just so random to me. I had no ties there, and I of course grew up with movies, but not really American TV shows. That was never really my goal. And I had a lot of encouragement of, you have the deliverables that you can make it, so you should consider it. So I was just like, okay, and so I had to make a choice at that time. And actually, even Ping Chong at the time had mentioned he felt that Asian American artists in the States continued not to be competitive because there weren't enough opportunities to continue that competitiveness, and he actually encouraged me to think about Los Angeles as well, because work-wise there's just much more work. There's just 5 to 7 times more, or there used to be more work, whether it be crappy work, whether it be stereotypical work, whatever it is, there was still much more work in LA, and that's just a city built on the industry. So so that was part of my transition and things that I wanted to share with people possibly who are in the industry or considering it.
Well, I didn't really understand what you said about Asian Americans are not the competitive state.
You got to continuously work, and you got to continuously work with good colleagues, and then good projects, and to continue to stay in the game. It's that competitiveness dies out when you don't get those opportunities. So that's what he was talking about.
Yes. How are you able to stay in the game if the work that's offered to you is very, I don't know if that's the case, but
sure,
it's stereotypical, or doesn't, box you in some way? I'm assuming that is the case.
I can only speak for myself of how I've navigated it. I've just used all my facilities possible. I think one of the things that right now I feel like the next generation that's coming up has great competitiveness because you can self-generate your work. YouTube wasn't in the scene at all. Digital cameras weren't that cheap. You know what I mean? Like now it's really, really different, and I think in a good way I did have this non-traditional way of approaching things. And so I had a theater background. I knew I had a deliverable look, so to speak, for Hollywood. I also had mentorship in writing, so I had a few plays that I had written, and so it's kind of coming full circle around now with my solo performance work. I had strong mentors, or I tracked how they made their own stamp, how they generated their own work. I still worked commercially to do commercial work on TV, so that was my bread and butter. And so I had to navigate through everything and really approach it as my own entrepreneurial my company. I was the CEO, I was paying myself, I had to do my own PR, marketing, getting news out, looking for my own work, and I think that's the way now. It's shifted more, I think, and I feel that I guess from that I cross-pollinate, which was very confusing at the time, I think, for people, and they viewed you in a certain way. And I said, Sam Shepard could do it. If a white man can do it, I can do it. Like that was just my attitude. Like you cannot tell me I can't do it. Why? And there would be people who were either resistant or just didn't view it in that way. And I think that's shifted a lot.
Well, one thing I can add to what Esther already said is when we were shooting this 10 years ago, I mean, I knew Esther a little bit, but I don't know her that well. But one thing really struck me so much was she was really working hard. I mean, she did this monologue, and she asked me to find a place so she can rehearse and everything. But the process of shooting this documentary, I can tell this woman works really hard. I mean, besides being she's well educated and intelligent and savvy, she works harder than anybody else. That really impressed me too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have just a comment and a question. I'm so glad I'm here tonight, and I really needed to hear this. I'm an actress and a writer, and this crazy thing, like about a month ago, I had this dream. I woke up, I can't remember my dream, but I just had this very clear thought that I had to go to LA. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's crazy because I worked so hard this past year. I finally got myself 2 commercial agents, and knock on wood, possibly this week, a legit agent. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm about to throw it out. I don't know what to do because I worked so hard in the last few years to create this, somewhat of a career here in New York. And I had this dream.
Sabbatical.
And I went on Craigslist and started looking for apartments, and I was like, what am I doing? But I just had this compulsion. I started cleaning my apartment and packing. And I needed to hear this, so thank you. But the question was, do you think that 10 years now that culturally we're moving away from stereotypes on as far as the roles that you're being offered, are you finding more diversity in the kinds of roles that you're getting versus the typical, stereotypical kind of Asian roles? So, yeah.
Esther can answer that.
I think for sure. I think there's just it's a really exciting time right now in Los Angeles and just more mainstream. But I've actually not been in the thick of all of that for the past almost about a year and a half, because I've been doing my own show and I've been doing my own work, and I've actually interconnected a lot of my personal life and goals that are actually wider and much more interesting for me. So I've done a lot of thought leadership work. I was a TED Fellow. I was a Korean American leadership fellow. So I've been traveling a lot internationally and speaking and doing a lot more educational, politically, socially involved work. Right now it's a little bit less than the auditions that I've been going out on, but more so me as a viewer seeing what's going out there. So that's for sure. I think still, at least from my experience, still my into Hollywood and most of the TV work that I've done has not been because of my MFA in acting. It was because I spoke Korean fluently. And from there, I was able to like wedge myself in, but that was a very interesting experience for me, and at least that was my experience. I do think you need to have some kind of, in some way, and to build upon that. But it's changed a lot, but I still think that there needs to be much more empowerment and power and choice making in the side of production, and that comes from not only writing, showrunners, people who really make the decision, and I don't think it necessarily has to be the way that Hollywood used to be. There's a lot more people now who really, including myself, I don't watch TV that much, and I don't have time. I'm not super interested. Internet accessibility with everything. I'm interested in what's going on in the world right now, and so I think that has to be part of. I know that has cachet. I know for me, I have
In your head to do before you do.
oh, Esther has all this Hollywood credits and whatnot, but I think it's shifting and morphing a lot, and honestly, I think Hollywood has been since really the SAG strike and the writer's strike. So it's been a few years now, about 5-6 years, where they're just really trying to figure out what the next step is and what's going on, and trying to reinvent themselves. So which means if that time comes when you have an innovative idea or something very interesting and you have a lot more to offer than just so you have to approach it, I think, I believe, in a more polymathic, in a much more hybrid way, and I think mainstream is trying to do that as well.
Also, reality television, that's really dominate TV now. So
That just started, then as well.
it wasn't like that 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, and
So, I mean, there are a lot of things we can talk about, but
lots
that's one.
have happened in 10 years.
Yeah, but
I was just thinking, I was in junior high in the late 90s, and I remember watching TV. It was like a commercial. I feel it was like a cell phone commercial or something, and I remember seeing an Asian guy, and it was like the first time I remember seeing like an Asian guy just on like a commercial, and I was like, because I remember watching, I watched cartoons all my like childhood and never saw an Asian person on a commercial, and that was more like, I was like 97 or something. I was like, oh, there was an Asian guy on TV on a commercial, and now you see them like a lot more in commercials all the time or in TV shows. Like, I don't know. I was just thinking about like when this was shot and how things maybe. I mean, I wonder.
I think things have changed a lot even during
She
that
went
time.
back to the West Coast.
That is not
Well, it's up to her.
anyone's.
Are there more opportunities there for her?
I mean, for young person, I would say just follow your heart and then see what happens. And then maybe she might be able to be like Esther, bi-coastal. You go back and forth, you do some interesting theater here, you go to LA, do some TV work or film, hopefully, and maybe, I got really hooked. Like Esther, you have to be creative being an actress. That's the only way you can survive.
Where do you see yourself? I don't know. How do you see yourself 5-10 years? What is the peak in your career?
I have never really thought about a particular peak.
More to come. I think so. More to come for Esther.
When I grow older, I'm just going to put on my Korean accent so I could just play a lot of auntie role. And I'll just be like, I haven't thought about that. I think it's, if you, I would like to share this TED Talk that Elizabeth Gilbert, she did a TED Talk about being an artist and how pressurous it is to think about a peak and having certain things. I think I do think it's just a trajectory of of the projects and the journey itself. I never thought my solo performance piece would be this full-length entity when it started. I did have a goal and things that I thought about, but for me right now, if I think about 5-10 years, it's I'm not skirting the question at all. It's nothing like, oh, I have to do this film, or I think it is my personal work and being able to be in a position to make it happen. That's another thing, because there's tons of great ideas. There's enormous amount of talent out there. There's so many things that need to be in place to make things really happen, and which is why I am extraordinarily supportive, and I really think it's important that people fund Yuna's work. And no, it's